The Beatitudes today, applying Jesus' teachings to modern challenges. When I first read the Beatitudes in Matthew 5, I remember thinking, this doesn't sound like success the way the world defines it. The world tells me to strive for power, wealth, recognition, and self-sufficiency. But Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, laid out a completely different path, one that values humility, mercy, purity, and righteousness. At first, I struggled to understand how these teachings applied to my life. The Beatitudes seemed so countercultural, so opposite of what I had been taught to pursue. But the more I reflected on Jesus' words, the more I realized the Beatitudes aren't just ideals for ancient times. They are a radical blueprint for living today. In a world filled with division, greed, and self-promotion, Jesus calls me to something different. To be meek when others are prideful. To hunger for righteousness when others chase worldly success. To be merciful when revenge seems justified. Applying the Beatitudes to modern life isn't easy, but I've learned that true blessing comes not from what I achieve, but from how I live according to Christ's teachings. Understanding the Beatitudes in today's world. The Beatitudes are found in Matthew 5, 3 through 12, and each one presents a paradox. The weak are strong, the poor are rich, the persecuted are blessed. These are the values of God's kingdom, not the world's kingdom, and when I apply them to my daily life, I start to see life and my purpose differently. Here's how each Beatitude speaks to the challenges I face daily. 1. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:3. At first I didn't understand what it meant to be poor in spirit, but then I realized it's about humility. The world values self-sufficiency, being strong, independent, and in control. But Jesus says true blessing comes when you recognize your need for God. I've had times when I thought I could handle everything on my own. I relied on my abilities, my resources, and my own wisdom. But those were the times I felt the most empty and anxious. Being poor in spirit means admitting that I don't have it all together. It means acknowledging I need God's strength, not just my own. I can't save myself. I need His grace. I am nothing without Him. In today's world, where people try to prove their worth through achievements and status, Jesus reminds me the greatest blessing comes when I surrender my pride and depend on Him completely. Number 2, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Matthew 5:4. Our culture tells us to move on quickly, avoid pain, and stay strong. But Jesus tells me it's okay to grieve. I've had moments of deep loss, times when I felt broken, abandoned, or overwhelmed by sorrow. The world often tells me to hide my pain, to keep pushing forward without addressing it. But Jesus doesn't ask me to ignore my grief. He promises to comfort me in it. When I've lost loved ones, He has been my peace. When I've mourned over my failures and sins, He has offered forgiveness. When I've grieved over the brokenness of the world, He has reminded me of His coming redemption. The Beatitudes remind me that it's okay to mourn. God sees my pain, and He meets me with His presence. He meets me in it with His presence, His love, and His promise of restoration. Number 3, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Matthew 5:5. The world praises those who are loud, assertive, and aggressive, those who fight their way to the top. But Jesus says, true blessing belongs to the meek. Meekness doesn't mean weakness. It means having strength under control, choosing gentleness over aggression, being humble rather than boastful. In my daily life, I face situations where I have to choose. Do I respond with pride or humility, with force or with grace? When I let go of my need to prove myself and instead walk in humility, I find peace. I no longer need to fight for my worth. God is my defender. Number 4, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Matthew 5:6. There's so much in this world that promises fulfillment, success, entertainment, material possessions. But no matter how much I chase after those things, I always end up wanting more. Jesus tells me that the only thing that will truly satisfy my soul is righteousness. Not money, not power, not approval from others, but living in alignment with God's will. When I hunger for God's truth more than worldly opinions, I am filled. When I thirst for his presence more than temporary pleasures, I find lasting joy. Number 5, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Matthew 5:7. The world tells me to hold grudges, seek revenge, and demand justice, but Jesus calls me to show mercy. This is one of the hardest Beatitudes for me to live out. When I'm wronged, my first instinct is to prove my point, hold on to resentment, and make sure the other person faces consequences. But Jesus reminds me that I have been shown mercy, that I'm called to extend that same mercy to others. Forgiveness isn't about excusing wrong. It's about letting go and trusting God to bring justice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ, God, forgave you. When I choose to have mercy over bitterness, I experience freedom and peace. 6, blessed are the pure of heart, for they will see God. In today's world, purity is undervalued. Society constantly promotes impurity in entertainment, a lack of integrity in business, a heart focused on selfish desires. But Jesus says that those who are pure in heart will see God. That means living with integrity, even when no one's watching, guarding my thoughts and desires, seeking God's presence with a sincere heart. Purity isn't about legalism, it's about devotion. It's about desiring God more than anything else. 7, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. Today it's easier to argue than listen, to fight rather than reconcile. Division is everywhere, politics, social issues, even within families. But Jesus calls me to be a peacemaker, to listen instead of judge, to seek understanding instead of fueling arguments, to bring unity where there is division. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Romans 12:18. Being a peacemaker means reflecting God's love in a divided world. Number 8, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. Standing for my faith isn't always easy. Sometimes it means being misunderstood, facing rejection, holding on to my beliefs when others criticize them. Jesus reminds me that faithfulness is more important than popularity. No matter what opposition I face, my reward is in heaven. Final thoughts, living the Beatitudes every day. The Beatitudes challenge me to live differently, to seek God's ways over the world's ways. When I apply these teachings to my life, I experience true blessing, not in wealth or status, but in deep, unshakable joy that comes from walking with Jesus. So today, I choose to live by the Beatitudes, not just as words on a page, but as the foundation of my life.